Thank you for watching the Orwellian named Thought Criminals. That's our show for who Orwell you would call those of us who actually have free speech in a totalitarian society. You are familiar with my co-host Ralph Benko. He's a weekly contributor to Newsmax, and he is the co-author of the Capitalist Manifesto, co-founder and chair of the 180,000 member Facebook group Capitalist League. And your host, me, I am a weekly contributor to Townhall and the editor of Intellectual Conservative. And so today we are going to discuss the horrible delays and cancellations going on with flights. I have been undergoing utter hell the last 2 days. I still am not on my plane yet. And then we will move on to a racist math textbook that is being proposed all over the country, including right here in Paradise Valley, Arizona, where it includes a graph that says that conservatives are more racist than liberals. And I'm not kidding. And then finally, we'll just end with some thoughts on the anniversary yesterday. Christmas was the 30th anniversary of the end of the totalitarian communist Soviet Union. So to begin, Ralph has heard me venting the last couple of days due to Omicron, the new COVID variant, and due to very bad weather in the Pacific Northwest. We usually don't get a lot of snow up there, but it's been an unusually snowy season. There are just thousands of us who have had our flights canceled and then delays trying to get any of them back up and going. I'm flying Alaska Airlines. Unfortunately, they're not like a huge carrier that has massive flights. So when they delayed my flights and then canceled them, I didn't have a whole lot of recourse. And so basically what happened to me was I was supposed to fly out on Christmas on Saturday.
Fly out from Phoenix, Arizona, from Phoenix Sky Harbor to Seattle Tacoma Airport, the worst, most miserable airport in the good old US of A.
Oh, really? You think
according to today's The Hill or Politico, they gave a special call out to Seattle Tacoma Airport as the most miserable of all of the airports in the United States for flight cancellations and delays. So congratulations, Rachel. You can sure pick them.
Well, I've been flying back there every year since I moved away about 95. So every Christmas I go back there and I always, it's a gamble whether I'm going to have issues or not. This is about the worst experience I've ever had. I will say there was one year that topped that. The first year I moved away, which was 95. Basically what happened that year was I was flying back across the country, had a stopover in Minneapolis. Well, all the flights were canceled and it was late at night. And so they were going to put me and my brother back on a flight the next morning. And it was really early in the morning, like 7 a.m. or something. And so we thought, okay, well, we just won't even bother with a hotel because it would only be a few hours. So we thought we would just rough it and spend the night. Well, we didn't realize that CNN came on every 20 minutes all night long. And there were armrests between every single chair. So you could not lie down. You could not sleep in silence. It was the most horrible experience. And they put us on first class next morning at 7 a.m. But how can you even enjoy first class? I mean, anyway, so this year is proving to be almost as bad. I went down to the airport yesterday after they canceled it Saturday. And they first tried to basically schedule me for, 12-hour flight with 3 stops. And luckily I was able to get through and fix that.
12 hours between Phoenix and Seattle?
Yes.
You can get from the East Coast to Hawaii in only 12 hours. You should have told them to send you to Hawaii instead. It would have been a much more pleasant experience.
So anyway, I was at least able to get them to get me back on a direct flight. But when I went to go get that direct flight at 4 p.m. yesterday, they said it had been delayed and it wasn't going to leave till 9. I, having experience, said, well, can I leave the airport and come back at 9? And they were like, oh, yeah, sure. So I just kept checking, and sure enough, by 9 p.m. last night, it was completely canceled. Meanwhile, you
Wait,
can't.
so let me see, I'm following this. On Christmas, that you had a flight on Christmas Day that was canceled. And
Yes.
then you had a flight that was scheduled for the day after Christmas, or as our former oppressive overlords, the Brits say, Boxing Day for 4 o'clock, which then got delayed till 9 o'clock. You went home, you kept checking, and then the 9 o'clock flight got outright canceled. So so far we've got 2 cancellations and 1 major delay. And that was Christmas Day and Boxing Day. And as for today,
Oh, and there's still more. Yesterday, okay, so I called them at 4, trying to reschedule and get a better flight, because I really didn't even want to fly at 9 p.m. last night. And so they have this service where they say, we got your number, we'll call you back in the order you received. You don't have to wait on hold. Well, I didn't want to just rely on that. So I also stayed on hold. And I basically stayed on hold all afternoon, all evening, until I went to bed at, like, I don't know, 10 or 11 last night. Never got through to anyone. Then I woke up again this morning and prepared to call in again and try to get somebody. First of all, the connection was really sketchy. I couldn't really hear the automated system. So I called back again. Then I just got a busy signal for a while. Then I called back again, and I finally got placed on hold again. Meanwhile, I'm trying to do everything I can on the internet to try to reschedule it. And that was a complete, utter nightmare. The only thing it would let me reschedule it to were more like 12-hour flights, coming up in a day or two. Then what happened? I started looking for, or I think this morning I found a flight out at 9 p.m. tonight, but it wouldn't let me click on it. Every time I tried to click on it, it gave me an error. And so here's where I'm at now. I finally went to Orbitz to look for other flights. There was exactly 1 flight available, 1, besides the Alaska Airlines one that I found at 9 that I can't click on. This one through Delta for $368 is going to fly me out tonight at 10 p.m. I'll get in at 1 a.m. And granted, my family lives an hour and a half from the airport. So I don't, and then it's just pure snow there. So they're not going to want to come pick me up. I'll probably end up staying in a hotel, but that's better than nothing. My dad is getting married on Wednesday. So not only have I now missed Christmas evening with the family, I'm about to miss my dad's wedding. So anyway, that's it. And I'm not going to go too much into the politics behind it. I do understand there's a lot of pilots who refuse to get the vaccine, and so there is a shortage of pilots because of that reason. There's probably some more political things going on, but for the most part, the airlines are just saying it's because pilots are getting sick from Omicron, and the Seattle area can't handle all the snow.
Wow, you certainly have this
Bad luck.
no, this ability to create drama everywhere that you go, Rachel.
No, that's the men I date. They create the drama. Present one accepted.
Okay, fair enough. Well, so you are looking to see if you can't get to Seattle tonight, arriving tomorrow. In order to sleep in a hotel, since it's buried in snow, which never happens in Seattle, so in order for you to be on hand to freshen yourself up and actually get to attend your father's wedding to your new stepmother sometime Wednesday. So Mazel Tov. I hope it's a successful and comfortable flight, and with the same number of landings as takeoffs as
I'm fully expecting to get down there tonight and have it be canceled. I am completely prepared for that. I fly enough that I know to be very careful not to check my bags before I'm completely certain. My poor brother, he was flying in from Washington, D.C. to Seattle, and his flight got diverted yesterday into Pasco. the middle of nowhere in Washington State, 4.5 miles in good weather drive away from our hometown. And so he pretty much had to make a gamble. Does he rent a car and try to drive in the snow, or does he just, sit around and wait? And meanwhile, his luggage is going to Seattle. So my brother, So my brother rented a car, didn't get very far. At one point, he said he was going 14 miles an hour driving on the highway. The snow was so bad, he had to pull over at some random motel. I immediately started sending him horrible reviews of the motel. I won't say what the name of it is.
Oh.
So he and his kids spent the night there last night, no luggage. And then they set out, they got to our hometown sometime today. And as far as I know, they still don't have their luggage. They might be just waiting to get it till they pick me up tonight.
Could be worse, Rachel. They could have taken a wagon train through Donner Pass.
Remind me, was that like our ancestors?
Yeah, the cannibals, the ones that ate each other at Donner Pass. So, count your blessings. It used to take between 6 and 9 months to get across the country instead of between 6 and 9 hours. And so that's, progress.
Well, and I'm also counting my blessings in the fact that I have family to go spend the holidays with, and my immediate family is not cutting me off for not being vaccinated. And so we are all just going to have a wonderful after the holidays. And there are so many other people who are suffering and not allowed to see family, or they don't even get along with them, whether it's politics or other reasons. So I am very grateful for that.
Good. And besides which, you very cleverly caught COVID by virtue of not being vaccinated. So you now have natural herd immunity, right?
Well, even if I had been vaccinated, I still was probably going to get it. I mean, everybody who's vaccinated is getting it now, even the triple vaccinated. In Israel, they're about to consider a second booster shot.
Look, I am triple vaccinated. And I just count my blessings, that I count my lucky stars that people who do get a breakthrough infection after having been vaccinated typically have a very mild case, like a bad flu for a week or two.
Well, I will tell you this. My lefty friend is very equivalent to me, fairly healthy, similar age, triple vaccinated. He just got COVID. He spent Christmas in bed with COVID. And his symptoms were exactly the same as mine. I spent a couple days in bed. And so for people like him versus me, vaccine appeared to make absolutely no difference.
Okay, but you and Chuck Norris are kind of in the same category. And that is the COVID virus is afraid of you guys. So it's just, if you're tough enough, then I guess the COVID viruses will run away from you and quarantine themselves if they happen to encounter you, as happened with you. As for me, I'm triple vaccinated and proud. And according to you, Rachel, because I'm a paleo-conservative and the second most conservative man in the world, I am also twice as racist as progressives. Tell me more about this. What is this?
That was a nice segue, Ralph.
Yes, discovery, this flabbergasting discovery that you just made in a mathematics textbook there in Paradise Valley. I didn't even know you were still studying math in Paradise Valley. I thought you had graduated from grammar school or high school a long time ago.
Don't even remind me about this. I'm one of those people, I don't like math because school came really easy to me. I never had to study except math. Math I actually had to work at, so I don't like math. But anyway, I still make sure I know how to do it. Unlike the left, I understand numbers and debts and deficits. I got an A in economics in college. So anyway, what's going on is our Paradise Valley Unified School District here is considering adopting a pre-calculus textbook. And I'm going to say the name of it. It's called the Pre-Calculus 6th Edition by Robert Blitzer. And basically this textbook includes a graph that shows that very conservative people are a lot more racist than very liberal people. And the graph is just completely bogus. It's called Measuring Racial Prejudice by Political Identification. And it's been completely discredited. The Heritage Foundation has done a big analysis of it. And basically what they found is when you are given this survey to see how racist you are, it detects based on how concerned you are about appearing to be a racist, that gets confused with actually being a racist. So if you are really offended by racial injustice and you don't even want to be anywhere associated with that, they're going to call you a racist. And so these parents, tweeted at me on Twitter. That's how I found out about it. They know I'm a local reporter here. And they were just absolutely appalled by it. Yet it's something that might really end up being adopted. They're pushing this stuff through everywhere. And a lot of it's in the guise of critical race theory, but it's been renamed. They're calling it things like social emotional learning now in order to, disguise it so people don't know it's this critical race theory. And I'm just absolutely, it's called implicit association test. So if you ever see that phrase, and I'm going to put, a link to the article at the bottom of our video, but the whole textbook, I've included a screenshot of one of the index pages, and it's just full of all these topics that have nothing to do with math. Global warming, freshmen claiming no religious affiliation, death penalty, Amazon deforestation, depression, diversity, divorce, don't ask, don't tell policy, drug use among teenagers, and probability of accurate results with drug tests. What does that have to do with math?
Well, you tell me, what are they doing? What are these doing in a math book? It sounds to me, and I haven't seen it, so you have me at a disadvantage, that there's a second segment of this book, it's not the whole book, on statistics. And it sounds to me from your description is they're trying to politicize the use of statistics in ways that tend to be prejudicial to conservatives like us. As Benjamin Disraeli, the long ago Prime Minister of England, used to once famously said, there are three forms of lies: lies, damn lies, and statistics. So as statisticians will tell you with a little twinkle in their eye, you can prove anything with statistics. And so it sounds to me like this is a pretty outrageous case of them infiltrating what should be a neutral art or a neutral technique, and using it to essentially libel the legitimacy of conservatives by accusing us of a bunch of things and using statistics to, scare quotes, prove it. And I'm so glad that this has been found out. It's a business. And if enough school districts simply say, we're not buying that textbook because it is slanted, it is ideologically prejudiced, then they'll change it. Thanks to the miracles of capitalism, the publishers will say, hey, we're running up against a lot of sales resistance of this book. They make a lot of money selling textbooks. And so hopefully the great miracle of capitalism will eradicate this, thanks to people like you and the people who tweeted you, in terms of alerting the ultimate consumers, or the parents of the ultimate consumers, that this book has been tainted by adopting I think the word that's coming to my mind is pernicious, but insidious opinions that are very controversial and that are, at the very best case scenario, a distraction from the purpose of learning statistics and learning math, and an insult to 40% of the people in this country. Gallup has been polling this issue for 40 years, and it turns out about 20% of the people in the country refer to themselves as progressives, and about 40% refer to themselves as conservatives, and the others are moderates. So by insulting the plurality of Americans in the textbooks, it's morally wrong, and it's bad business. So thank you for writing a column and bringing it to the fore here on thought criminals.
And I'm going to make two more points, and then we can move on to our final topic. You know, my boyfriend thought this was absolutely outrageous because he is a math tutor. He's a Black man who teaches math. He graduated high school with a 5.0. Yes, he's younger, so, you know, they actually gave them extra, you know, points, unlike, you know, people more my age and your age where you could only get a 4.0. But he thinks it's absolutely disgusting, you know, because that's his thing. And it reminded me of another similar thing that came up recently where they are no longer requiring in some parts of the country. In fact, I think might have been Canada, in Ontario, actually. Math teachers don't have to pass these minimum tests anymore, which he thinks is just ridiculous. Oh, and the reason is because it's considered racist. Really? He's a genius at math, and you're saying it's racist for a Black person like him to be good at math? I mean, that's basically okay, don't get me started. My second point was this same.
No, before you move on, it's very, it is undermining the integrity of the educational system in order to essentially advance a political agenda or a creedal agenda, an ideological agenda. And you know, that is not just wrong, but it is antagonistic to republicanism. It's antagonistic to the values of the vast majority of people in this country. And, you know, I believe that it's a self-limiting problem, because as it comes to light, people like you, people like me, people like suburban moms will rise up and protest and eventually put enough pressure. But the school boards should be listening to the parents, okay, not listening to a bunch of bureaucrats somewhere or a bunch of so-called experts. Really, the Supreme Court has held multiple times that parents have a constitutional right to direct the upbringing, the education and upbringing of their children. Okay, that is now being trampled on, and it's time for us to push back.
And my second point was just that this school curricula, which is put out by a company named Pearson, they did a similar thing with a social studies book last summer. And basically this thing includes all these politically correct left-leaning topics in the book that don't belong in academia. And I'll just list off a few. Racism declared public health issue in 145 cities and counties across 27 states. There were articles promoting LGBT issues and climate change, such as these trans and non-binary teens hope their books will enlighten the world during Pride. And students of Pacific Island Club use poetry to address climate change. And finally, one exercise instructed students to write about the death of George Floyd, stating, "The murder of George Floyd was a tragic event in a long series of violent acts against communities of color."
So I'm sorry, Rachel, what's your point? Come on, come in for the close.
Why is this being taught in our schools? This is political views, okay? If you thought that the George Floyd death was a long series of violent acts against communities of color, that's a political statement. That is not learning, you know, reading, writing, and math.
Well, I'm far to your right on this one, Rachel. Meaning that I believe that the school system is required by conservative principles to confront the endemic racism that has become well embedded in our society, and that a lot of people of all colors, Blacks included, are unconscious of. And so what bothers me is the process by which we're coming to this. I believe that the process has been politicized, and the process has been put in the hands of elite professionals who do not share. Uh-oh, you've just been invaded by a black cat with a white tip on the tail.
Mr. B.
I think the parents of the children themselves ought to be expected to take the responsibility to make sure that these social issues are addressed, and addressed appropriately. I think the way that they're handling it right now, the school systems are handling it right now are, is reprehensible. But I'm far more conservative than you are in my belief that
I don't think that's
issues of racial injustice need to be addressed in the schools.
I think, racial injustice and, systemic racism has been decreasing year after year after year. I think Barack Obama tried to stir it back up again.
I can prove that using statistics, actually. But I bet you won't find it in your math book. And that is, back when I was a kid, which was long before you were born, okay, interracial marriage was unknown and it was stigmatized heavily. And now it's becoming, year after year, it's becoming more and more common, and the stigmatization of it is dwindling, except for in some sort of pockets.
That's proving my point.
I know, yes, I'm proving your point. Take yes for an answer. I'm just saying that statistics can be used to show that America is overcoming slowly, not fast enough, but surely, and better than anywhere else in the world, is overcoming its racist, its legacy racist attitudes. And the fact that, white people are marrying black people and Hispanics are marrying blacks and whites and Asians and so forth, and it is taken in stride. No, there is no stigma to it at all, and it is growing. So at this rate, we will be one big happy cafe au lait family in about another 2 generations, and racism will be a thing of the past because race will be a thing of the past. So America is making great strides, and bravo America for that.
Well, I hope you're right, because the left just keeps trying to gin up racism and make it into something that it's not. And I think the way they're trying to teach about racism in the schools is very one-sided and very distorted, and I don't like the way I'm seeing it. If you're going to educate people about racism, I think you need to be honest. And I think when it comes to police, yes, there are a few bad apples, but that doesn't mean that all the police are racist, and that's the kind of thing that they're trying to show. But anyway, let's move on, because I really did want to hit on our anniversary of
our 40th anniversary of America's victory in the Cold War. And that is over the 25th and the 26th, because time zones change, of 1991, the Soviet Union pulled down the hammer and sickle flag for the last time and dissolved itself legally into 15 different nations, the Russian Federation being one of them, and 14 what used to be called constituent republics of places like Latvia and Kazakhstan and Georgia. That's Georgia in Asia, not Georgia in Atlanta. And so, this was astounding. This was the headquarters of the world communist movement. China was a sideshow, as it were. And Ronald Reagan declared that we were going to actually win the Cold War. His phrase, "We win, they lose." It was the one thing that really motivated him as president. There were a lot of other things that he cared about, but this was
the greatest accomplishment, right? Would you say?
Winning the Cold War, which happened, he locked it in. It actually happened on George H.W. Bush's watch. Okay, but the fact is, it was due to the policies that were put into place by Reagan. And by the way, George H.W. Bush, who I'm not a big fan of, okay? Actually, the greatest thing he did in his career was when he was director of the CIA, not when he was vice president, not when he was president, but when he was CIA director, he created something called Team B to argue the case that America should rebuild its defenses and not just try to contain the Soviet Union, but to confront the Soviet Union. So George H.W. Bush actually deserves a piece of the credit for that, although mostly it belongs to Charlie Wilson and my dear friend who has played I'm sorry, King Herring. It's shameful that I'm drawing a blank on her name, because We've been friends for years. She's about 93, and she
Patrick?
no, she not no. Hold on a second. I cannot permit this historic injustice to go unmentioned on this 30th anniversary. But what really strikes me as weird is this is not celebrated anywhere. I wrote a column about the 20th anniversary when I was writing for Forbes. I probably wrote a column about the 25th anniversary. Joanne King Herring, okay, darling Joanne. She was a great grandniece of George Washington, a staunch conservative, a talk show host in Houston, and was called the Queen of Texas. She's now about 92 years old and going strong. And she basically said, we cannot let the Red Army crush the Afghani people. They invaded Afghanistan. So we have to arm them.
Free the Taliban. Oh,
we must arm the Mujahideen, the freedom fighters. And in fact, she went to Charlie Wilson, a Democrat, by the way, and she persuaded
Charlie Wilson's War is a really good movie. I just recommend that to everyone.
Charlie Wilson's War is a great movie, but the book by George Kreil, who was a 60 Minutes producer, is the best book on how Congress really works I have ever read. It is inspired. Charlie Wilson's War by George Kreil. Go find a copy and read it. It's flabbergasting. She persuaded Charlie to use all of his political capital. He'd been in the Congress for many years and hadn't actually done anything, but they loved him back home because he was a good old boy.
Texas.
And in Texas, right? And she got him to use all his political capital to arm the Mujahideen, which turned the tide in the Soviet invasion. And then when the Congress saw that the arms that they smuggled to the Muj were actually made the Muj effective at defending themselves, they appropriated Stinger missiles to them, which.
And I have to recommend Rambo 3 as well. Okay,
Rambo 3 as well. So these shoulder-fired $25,000 Stinger missiles would shoot down a $10 million Hind attack helicopter, and all of a sudden the tables were turned, and the Soviet army, the indomitable Soviet army, was getting wiped out by these barefoot guys wearing, typical Afghani cultural clothes with World War II vintage rifles, even World War I vintage rifles, and Stinger missiles. And eventually Gorbachev made them double down, and they were just getting their head handed to them, and they were humiliated. They left in humiliation, and 18 months later, Gorby dissolved the Soviet Union. So Joanne King Herring, as the partner and inspiration for Charlie Wilson, with a critical assist from Lech Walesa, Ronald Reagan, Maggie Thatcher, Pope John Paul II, and a couple of other supporting players, were the ones who turned it around, and then Gorby pulled the plug, and it was the end of the evil empire. Now, what strikes me as strange is when we won World War I, we had Armistice Day, we had demonstrations in the streets, we had celebrations, we had proclamations, and we even created Armistice Day, which is now celebrated as Veterans Day. After World War II, you had all sorts of celebrations going on, banner headlines, we won. The Cold War, which took us this close to nuclear annihilation of the whole world with the Cuban Missile Crisis and so forth. The day we won that, crickets. There was no celebration whatsoever. And I understand we didn't want to humiliate the USSR. They had dissolved themselves. There was no D-Day, there was no A-bombs, there was no 100-day push for the end of World War I. There was no drama to it. So rubbing it into them would been way too ungentlemanly for President Bush 41. So I get that. But by not celebrating our victory in the Cold War, America stayed on a wartime footing, stayed militarized. And when 9/11 came along, we misinterpreted it as Pearl Harbor 2.0 instead of a wacko guerrilla rogue group that did not have the power of a state behind them. And so I'm just telling I'm just using this event. I've got a column coming out of Townhall this coming week talking about this to help.
Not Newsmax?
I'm sorry, Newsmax.
Okay.
Forgive me. I used to write for Townhall freelance occasionally, but now I'm a Newsmax loyalist, so tune me in. Also, we're starting a blog that is a companion to this podcast. And so if you go to thoughtcriminals.ning.com, pretty soon you'll be, I'm just moving the content over, but pretty soon we're also going to be archiving all of our greatest hits from this podcast there, as well as elsewhere on the web. But I'm using this 30th anniversary at Newsmax to remind people we won the Cold War. The Cold War is over, and it's time for us to move forward into an era of peace and prosperity. So there.
And I just want to get in my closing parting shot, which is that I believe the reason we don't hear a lot of discussion of this anniversary, I mean, me and you talking about it are, pretty rare, is because everyone on the right is now calling the left communists. And so the left does not want this dredged up and reminded. They say almost 68 million people died as a result of communism in Russia. So why would the left want people to be reminded of this? And so that's why I think there's like a blackout in the mainstream media. And let's kudos to you, Ralph, for having us discuss this and bring this up and not let it lie. I mean, we need to remember this kind of stuff and quit whitewashing and forgetting history, because that's what the left wants us to do.
Yep. And the resurgence of socialism and even communism is something that we need to keep reminding. The American people don't need reminding. The American people know. The American people are a center-right people. We need to keep reminding the politicians communism was bad, and bringing it back would be terrible. There is no education in the second kick of the mule. So there.
And that pretty much ends our podcast for today. And I guess we will see you guys in a week. Have a wonderful rest of your holidays.
We'll see you next year. See you, Rich.